Hey everybody, this is Perch. Hopefully you got a chance, but I did a retrospective slash interview with Nancy Collins about her Swamp Thing run, and it was great. But there's aspects of it that just continue to stick in my head uh, over and over. And one of the biggest ones she said, which I think is powerful, is that during the course of her run, she basically had editorial tell her to murder off Abby, who was Swamp Thing's wife and mother of his child, Tefe. And instead of, she basically, it sounds like we didn't get too much into it. She basically kind of held her guns or held to what she believed. And instead of killing off Abby, she had Abby leave Swamp Thing. She created a pretty interesting storyline where Swamp Thing was torn between his responsibilities to the Green and being a family man, and it wasn't working, and he was trying, but at the same time, he has these powers that allow him to do things like create a doppelganger of himself and basically he had the ability to neglect Abby to some extent, and he also had the pressure to do that. And she's living in this world that's not one that she is comfortable with, not one she can navigate easily, and it led to her leaving it. And it was a powerful moment in the run. It got a lot of people angry. A lot of fans were really, really frustrated about it, and frustrated from the standpoint as well of almost preferring that Abby get killed. And I'm just struck by that. I turned that around in my head. I've heard aspects of that story before, but hearing her tell it kind of brought it home. And then kind of the postscript to all that was that Alan Moore reached out to Nancy and said, "Hey, good for you. You did the right thing. This was a better way to do it, and it fits with the character better. Just all around better." But it's interesting. I think the comment that Nancy made as well, that Joe picked up on too, was divorce is something a lot of people can relate to. They've seen it. They've either encountered it directly, or they've had others, people in their family, maybe parents, maybe friends who've been divorced, and they know the kind of the heartache and the trauma and the chaos that it causes. Whereas with death, you don't really know what it's like to live through death because you can't. It's death. You don't have that same kind of, it is the big unknown. You have the trauma, of course, of people maybe and you've loved who have died, but not yourself. You can't personalize it in the same way that you can divorce. And that may be a clue as to why people struggled with it so much. But the other aspect to it, because I start to relate it to kind of some of what we've seen with Spider-Man and Mary Jane and kind of that destruction of marriage, as something that really hit home for comic fans. I mean, that's one more day is something that, or one more day, one moment at a time. Anyway, it's this thing that people really struggle with. I mean, it made customers. I've relayed the story a million times. It made people viscerally mad. It had a guy just read the comic in the store and throw it on the ground and walk out and not come back. And that was a kind of emotional reaction. And it's, at times, I've heard people, Joe Quesada among them, kind of chuckle about that moment, and I think mistake what was going on there. He almost, in a proud way, was saying, I got it. This got an emotional reaction from a customer, and there's no higher honor than being able to tap into that emotion. I struggle with that a little bit, because I think when that emotion is disgust or rage, I don't know if these are emotions that you should be proud of tapping into, but you certainly did it, so congratulations. But not sure that was a great move. But it is it's interesting how death is something that's very casually tossed out in comics, whereas things like divorce and separation and kind of those moments are ones that are not used as much, but also ones that tend to be less handled, handled more clunkily, handled. I mean, I think Nancy handled it brilliantly. I think the Spider-Man thing kind of came out of nowhere and was handled poorly. I think they flirted with it from time to time with the Fantastic Four, with Sue and Reed. Of course, they have stayed together. They've done various things, but it's interesting to me how marriage, and we're looking at a storyline that was announced today that Doctor Doom is going to get married in an upcoming issue of Dan Slott's story. By the way, how many how much Dan Slott is just for his Fantastic Four runs, just tossing stuff out like mad. I mean, we've depowered Franklin, we've brought in new children, we've got married Alicia and Ben, we're marrying Doctor Doom, we've got a gate to go wherever. We've just the amount of stuff that's getting shoved into this comic. It feels, I don't want to say desperate. I'm trying to interpret if they're doing these things to try and line it up with a movie that Disney will come out with at some point in the future with Fantastic Four. But it feels like stuff's just they're throwing stuff at the wall pretty randomly, and I don't know that much of it's sticking. Like, are people really? Is it? Are people aware that Ben and Alicia are married and have two kids now? Is that something, or it feels like a new writer can come on and just kind of forget that. I may be wrong about that. It just feels like everything's being thrown at the wall. At any rate, the key here is that it seems like in comics, marriage is handled in such a weird, oddball way. And please, in the comments below, don't go for the obvious that the people writing these things are broken human beings, don't understand marriage, and they live with cats. I get it, sure, but it is interesting that we have this industry, and maybe there's a bigger story in here around how some of the people crafting these stories, I think, or editing the stories, struggle to relate. I would love to have been a fly in the wall with whatever editorial decision was like, well, we need to get Abby out of Swamp Thing's life, so Dad, kill her. And then have your writer tell you, like, no, there's a better way. I've got this different way of doing it. I've been leading to a lot of struggle and conflict in the marriage and kind of the different things the Swamp Thing's grappling with. This would be good to have her separated and to actually have to fight for an outcome of not killing off your IP in favor of something that was completely logical for the run. It's just weird. I can't quite wrap my head around that this was a debate or a struggle, and that people struggle, but it fits. It fits when you look at kind of how marriage and how things are handled. I mean, just the idea that there's no way people can possibly relate to Spider-Man if he's married. It's so weird. And Reed Richards, I mean, it feels like a lot of writers come on to Reed, including, by the way, Hickman. People celebrate the Fantastic Four run, and so do I. I think Hickman's Fantastic Four run was great. There was certainly a lot of love and care in that run. But is there another go-to for Reed's personality than, well, he kind of neglects his wife, and because he's all tied up in the science, he can't take his head out of the science, and he's always getting into shenanigans with the science, and Sue just wants a good night out in the town, and Reed's all geeking out over there with his computers, and it's like, to me, it feels like as much of a cliche and one note to the character as, say, Tony Stark, he may take a drink, and what will happen next? Oh no, I don't know. It's remarkable how you get these one kind of good killer moments in the character, and then it feels like the character gets stuck there. Maybe I don't know. It's a strange bit. Anyway, what do you think? Death or divorce? What's your pick? What do you think is better, kinder for characters, and how do you how do you relate to all this? And no, I'm not suggesting you. I mean, sometimes you get the double whammy where you get kind of both a. I mean, what was the end of Morrison's run where he got kind of both a death and not a divorce, but Scott's cheating on Jean and Jean's sleeping with Wolverine, and everybody's unhappy, and then she dies, but then she's back to life. Like, doing all the answers is not a good plan either. I don't know. It's puzzling. I'm just going to say this, and I know it's a cliche, and I know a lot of people have done videos about this topic and everything else, but it feels increasingly like people, not necessarily the writers, but the editors, the people who are kind of the long-term shepherds of these characters, it feels like they need, to maybe get out a little bit more, or or just expand their horizons. Like, once upon a time in the 80s, I think Mark Grunwald had talked about kind of doing tours where at either at a convention or somewhere, he gathered up a bunch of the other editors, and they went out and they explored the city, and they did different things. And it's like, hey, let's get some different life experiences. Does that go on anymore? I don't know. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with no. That's what I'm guessing. Anyway, curious. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hey, like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Thanks for listening.